Jason Haddix, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be here. Great view.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So you've had quite a interesting career, and I thought today we could chat a bit about your different steps along the journey, and also some advice for other people, either beginning or in the middle of their security career journey. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Sounds great.
Cool. So for people who haven't heard of you before, could you tell us a bit about who you are and just your journey over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Jason Haddix. I've been doing primarily offensive security for the first 15 years of my career was offensive security, and then I moved into security leadership, and now I run my own company, which is consulting and training. So I've done a little bit of everything, but my journey started off right after high school. Got a job just like everybody else, and was working in an insurance place. Kind of fell in with the wrong crowd a little bit on the dark web, or the beginnings of the dark web back then, and learned a little bit of web hacking. And so back then it was the dawn of web hacking, AppSec, and learned about that and got a job at a small pen testing firm called Redspin. That was my first role. And it was because they really didn't have anybody who knew AppSec or web security at all. So this is the day where you could go out to the internet and probably find SQL injection in almost every website.
Yeah, it's like login page.
Exactly.
Prominent websites.
Exactly, yeah. And so I did that for a long time there. And then I left there to go to HP, where a mutual acquaintance of ours, Daniel Misa, a good friend of ours, he hired me onto the AppSec team there. And that was a wonderful experience. Got to work with so many smart people on that team. We built like a little micro team inside of HP called Shadow Labs, and it was mostly web and mobile hacking at that point. And then started to move into leadership at the end of that 5 years.
Was that also a consulting firm within
Yes,
HP? I think it was actually, was it the Fortify acquisition?
It was, yeah. Well, it was a little bit of both. So when I got there, it was a consulting team just for HP. They hadn't acquired Fortify yet. And so you can imagine that HP does deals with, other companies for large swaths of printers and, servers and stuff like that. And so they would add professional services onto it to do their penetration testing and their AppSec, testing. And so we were that team that did that for people. So we were a consultancy basically. But then when Fortify came on, we made it a brand, and we included dynamic analysis and static analysis in the package so that they could get holistically like a view from both places. So yeah. And then after HP went to BugCrowd. So I got bitten by the bug bounty type of fever. And I had always wanted to see if my skills were any good, compared to my peers. And so that offered that kind of competitive leaderboard and, nature in bug bounty. Ended up going and doing bug bounty moonlighting while I was at HP, and then eventually going to work at BugCrowd, where a friend of mine, Casey Ellis, was the founder of that company. And back in the day, it was, there was no platforms. It was literally like you got an email. It's like, hey, a bounty is starting tomorrow at this time. And then if you find a vulnerability, email it to this inbox. And so did that for quite a while, and worked there. And then that at the end of that ended up in an executive position again. And then decided to try my hand at the big company CISO role. And so I did CISO work at Ubisoft, which is a video game company. They make Assassin's Creed, Just Dance, The Division, all of these games, and stayed there for quite a while, and then left to start my own company.
Yeah, the combination of security consulting, getting to work on like a broad variety of things, also bug bounty, I guess, getting to tackle many targets, and then I think one thing that'll be fun to get into in a moment is the combination of being very deeply technical from like an IC point of view, as well as again being a security leader at like a massive company like Ubisoft. But I guess going back sort of to the beginning, so for people who are interested in breaking into security, I'm curious what advice you would have for them, and if there's maybe a type of role or type of company you would most recommend.
I think just general advice is I think of InfoSec roles these days as very similar to an artist, where you have to have a portfolio of work, even if you haven't had a job yet, which means that you have to take advantage of a whole bunch of the free resources that exist online. Capture the flag, competitions, platforms that allow you to get micro certifications, or do education curriculum. You have to fill up your experience because you don't have any yet in the industry. So for those of the people I highly recommend Portswigger's WebSec Academy. If you're going to
one of the best.
One of the best. Yeah, absolutely. And it's absolutely free, which is amazing. Right. So Highly recommend that. And there's a bunch of resources like that out there nowadays, right? There's more than there's ever been, and so you can fill up the experience section or related experience or section on your resume pretty easily these days, just to show people that you're passionate about the space and you've been trying and things like that. So I think that that's a lot of people know about that, but it's good to just reinforce it. And then as far as roles to get started in, I mean, there's a bunch of roles. In offensive security, if you really have your heart in offensive security, you're usually going to start off as a vulnerability management person, or a junior pen tester or something like that, right? And those roles, you're mostly a scanner monkey. You're going to use some kind of automated tool, click a button, interpret results, and that's how you get your start. But there's nothing wrong with that. I started there, got to learn a lot about the vulnerability space and how scanners worked and stuff like that, and that benefited me way down the line. And if you're in blue team, it might be like a SOC 1 role, or maybe even a GRC role or something like that. And so there's a lot of opportunity still in the low, like in like the intro space to kind of get into.
Yeah. I want to say a bit of an opinionated take, and I'm curious if you agree. I think bug bounty is great. Or what's nice about it is that there's no barrier to entry. You can start, you don't need anyone's permission. But I think a lot of the low-hanging fruit has already been found. And I could imagine by someone who's very new to security, it's kind of like depressing to spend a lot of time and you're still figuring out what to do yet. So I guess part of my opinion or advice I've given to people is, try to get a role where like your full-time job is security, so that you're getting paid to do security. Because if you're not in security yet, you have maybe you're in school, or maybe you just have another job. And that's taking a bunch of hours that you're not spending getting better at security, which is slowing your overall progress. So I guess I'm pitching like get a role in security as early as you can, so that just a greater percentage of your time can be spent on security. Because then from there, it's easier to get the second job, but it's sort of the first job is kind of hard. Versus like trying to do bug bounty strictly on the side. I'm curious.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're definitely right about the bug bounty stuff. It's like programs that have very qualified hunters on them, they're not picked over. It's just the bugs are not shallow bugs that are easy for a beginner to find, right? And this is a very contentious opinion, but I think that that's a good place to participate in not a bug bounty, but maybe a VDP program. So a program that's run on one of the platforms that is not paid, but you just report bugs. You have a couple of opportunities in that portfolio kind of building. You have the education opportunities that you can do yourself and put on there. Then you have opportunities to find vulnerabilities to show that you have the skill set to, do the offensive security thing or whatever. And the two subcategories there is like find a CVE, which is not trivial. Some 0-day and some software, or go to a VDP, which usually are larger scope programs. They're like bug bounties. If you just don't get paid, you get points on the platform, and find a couple bugs on one of those, which are easier to find on, and then put those on your resume and say, hey, look, I may not have gotten paid for this, but this was an enterprise site, hosted by a big brand, and I found something there and was acknowledged for my work. So that's a little bit of a hack that you can put on your resume there. And I love seeing, CVE, security research, self-training, bug bounty work, VDP work on resumes when I hire, for sure. So.
Yeah, is part of the argument you're maybe implicitly making for the vulnerability disclosure programs, or VDPs, the fact that because they're not monetarily rewarded, that the best bug bounty people may not be spending most of their time on it, because they're like, yeah, I do this for a living, so exactly. I'm making money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the best bug bounty hunters don't want anything to do with VDPs, but they're more there to, if you see something, say something type of catch-all buckets for vulnerability management. But a lot of people start with them, like big organizations who don't want to dive directly into the deep end with the bounty will start with a VDP. And so, the big hunters won't hunt on those programs, right? Their hourly rates are very high, and they're not going to do that. But new people can leverage them for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. What do you feel about people starting in security doing some security consulting? Because I think a lot of the people I know who are really good today, and it could be penetration testing, it could be more detection and response, like a Mandiant or something like that. But I think a lot of the people who I feel like are really good, not all of them, but and maybe this is also just due to timing and where the industry was at the time, but I feel like a lot of people have security consulting often earlier in their career. And I think one advantage of it to me is that you're seeing a ton of different technology stacks very quickly. You're seeing a bunch of company cultures. There's kind of like a sink or swim sort of environment in terms of like, you got to get good fast on this new thing that you've never seen before. So I'm curious, do you feel like starting in security consulting or pen testing was very formative for you? And would you recommend it to other people? Or if there's a better path now, knowing what you know now?
I don't know if it was the best path. I think that a proper structured path would have been more of learn the development environments, like learn to code first. Like I went straight into offensive security with basic scripting knowledge, but no intimate knowledge of really any front end languages or anything like that. So I could script in Python, I could script in Bash, and that's what got me through most of it. Now, as a pen tester, those are usually what the work asks for, right? You're not coding full front stacks or anything like that. But yeah, I wanted to go back to one thing you asked earlier in the last question, was that a lot of people will be in the position of having a job at a place already that's IT related, right? And so they'll come to a conference or whatever, they're looking to move into security. Now, for one reason or another, you may not be able to just dedicate your life like a ninja and go to like a monastery and train for InfoSec, right? Or cybersecurity.
Yeah, you've got responsibilities, bills to play, maybe
exactly.
a family.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, one of the things that I worked on while I did have like a stint as help desk in IT was, like I just made myself a fly on the wall of the security team at that company. And so since I had those web skills, I would just bring them, like I would find stuff internally on internal apps, and I'd be like, hey, I found cross-site scripting on this portal that's used internally. Here it is, here's how you execute it. And I remember some of those engineers were more exploit focused. And so they were like, oh, what's this web stuff, that this kid's talking about that keeps, he keeps bringing it to us. And so that helped me get recommendations from them to get my first pen testing job. So there's always opportunity to just kind of like show up and be knowledgeable and helpful to a security group at a job where you're still working IT or doing anything else, honestly. So that is one way that you can, I guess, like, wedge yourself in there.
Yeah, I love that point. And that's one thing that people may not realize if they're not in security already, is that usually the internal security team of companies like love when other people are excited about security. Like it like makes their day. So maybe you're a developer or just other IT admin, and you have access to probably the same wiki, so you can snoop on what your company's internal security team is doing. Oh, what was the recent pen test findings? I think reaching out to them and leaning on them as a resource. I think it would be hard for me to think of a time where a team would be not excited about having someone do that.
Yeah, I mean, normally it's part of the
like 99% of the time they're like, let's go.
No, normally it's part of a team. At least in old school security, it was like security is the office of no, and you don't really want to interact with them a ton. Now that's changing in the security engineering, worlds, but yeah, back then it's like, if you want to talk to security, that's great.
Yeah, so lonely, they need friends.
The quarter cubicles.
Okay, so we've talked a bit about breaking into security. So I'm curious about your thoughts on, let's say you're like a junior security engineer or pen tester. What do you think is, like, how would you focus your time to optimally go from like junior to say senior?
Yeah, so I can only speak to my own experience,
but
I do think it's definitely indicative of what I see in a lot of other people. And it's actually being able to communicate effectively via, storytelling, written text. Those things got me from junior to senior. I was very technical. I was very good at the pen testing part. But most of the opportunity for me to show my technical acumen was through speaking with people and presenting to people. And so I would be the guy who would take the newest attack vector and do a quick PowerPoint on it and present it to the company and say, hey, we're looking for this now. We've added it to our methodology. Here is the method. I built our methodology. Here is the methodology for, the checklist of what we're doing and organizing things. And that took me from, the junior to the person then people were asking questions to. And then from the person that people were asking questions to the person that people relied on and looked up to, and then eventually getting moved into a senior role or a staff role or a director role. So
nice. And to be clear, I love that you did that, but it sounds like nobody told you to do that, and it wasn't part of your job description. You were just like, this is cool and seems important, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was all based out of passion, right? It's like
Mm.
I loved pen testing when I did it so much. I would be researching in all my free time and like, oh, there's this cool thing. I have to tell the team about it. And so it is a lot of like passion-based self-motivation, in that. And there has to be a willingness from your colleagues also to want to listen to you and learn. But I had that in the beginning. So at pretty much all my places. So it was really nice. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. I just wanted to like double click or like emphasize that part, because I think sometimes I see people who won't do a thing because they're like, oh, it's not in my job description, or it's not a thing this company does yet. And they're kind of looking for permission to do this thing because it's like not a thing that happens already.
No one's going to give you permission for anything, honestly. I mean, we were talking about it before. It's like, as we were speaking, it's an unrelated topic, and it's like, ask forgiveness rather than permission, sometimes. So yeah, I think some of the roles that I've been into, even the leadership roles, I have willed into existence. I remember when I was, in my late 20s, Dan Kaminsky was the head of penetration testing at IOActive, and I really looked up to him. And
as did I, and many people.
Many people, and HP didn't have a director of penetration testing role. Penetration testing was like a spinoff of AppSec, even though we were doing network testing too. And so it didn't make a lot of sense. And I was like, hey, if I'm going to be the person that's making the methodologies and I'm going to manage the team and the consulting, and which is a lot of work, by the way, the minutia of running a consultancy is crazy.
It's tough.
And doing research at the same time. I was like, I want this title. I want to be director of penetration testing, like my hero. And I kind of willed it into existence. I had to ask for it. You don't get anything in this world unless you ask for it. So,
yeah, it certainly helps. Actually, it's funny. I didn't know that you willed that title into existence.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I've told you this story, actually. So how I got my current role at Semgrep is maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I was chatting with, so it was R2C at the time, a bunch of super smart people. And I was chatting with them, getting to know them better. And basically I pitched Isaac, the CEO. I was like, I feel like you guys need a role that's like this, that does this. And, and I think I would be a good person to do that.
Yeah.
And he thought for a while, and he's like, let's write down what that would look like.
Yeah.
But the head of security research role was like not something they were hiring for.
Yeah.
And I just sort of pitched them on the idea that this role should exist.
Yeah.
And they were like, that sounds cool.
Yeah. I mean, and it's an incredibly privileged place to come from for like for us, right? Because
and you have to be like doing the work beforehand.
Exactly.
And like 50 things need to happen before this can happen, to be clear.
Yeah.
But sorry.
But no, absolutely. That's it's a thing I've been talking about a lot with my mentees lately is you don't get anything unless you ask for it. And the worst that could happen is someone says no. And that doesn't affect you long term. Someone says no, you just try it somewhere else, or you try again in a little while. And if it's a role, if it's learning a skill set, if it's going to a training or a conference, if it's shadowing someone that you think has the skills that you need to succeed, you need to ask. No one's gonna read your mind. It's not even that no one's gonna give it to you. It's just that no one's gonna read your mind. So you need to tell them what you want. So
yeah. And I think one thing that I heard from your story that you were doing that I've also seen effective for other people is basically doing the work for the role you want.
Yep.
Before you are that role. So it sounds like you were basically the director of pen testing at HP in terms of everything you were doing, in terms of like running the organization, building the methodology, managing all the consultants, like all the things that you would list on that JD, you were already doing it. So really like giving you the title was almost a formality in terms of like, it wasn't like, you've never done anything like this before and you're like, please make a huge bet on me. So, and to give me, it's like, no, like I'm already doing it and I have been for like a year. So like, let's just formalize this, which I think is like a important nuance.
Yeah, for sure. It's a little bit of a hack. It's, start adding a little bit more and a little bit more. I do think that, we are in a world now where work-life balance is more important than ever. And so I definitely ate into my free time and my family time earlier in my career to make some of those things happen. And I don't know if I would necessarily recommend it all over again. I might have tried to just be a little bit more balanced about it, but it did work out. So, there's that. And, that's a personal risk-based scenario for each individual to kind of decide if they want to do that. But yeah, I put all that stuff on my own plate. It was easy to write up when I went to them with the job description of like, this is what it does. This is all the stuff I'm already doing here. And then here's some additional stuff I would be doing. So,
Yeah. While you're talking about it, I'm curious to hear your thoughts more on work-life balance, because I think you've obviously had a very interesting career, both with cool things you've done at the day job, as well as you've had, I think, incredible research output in terms of like your bug hunters methodology talks, which are like some of my favorite talks, and yeah, lots of other public-facing work. So I like that you caveated and nuanced it in terms of like, yeah, there's like some real sacrifice here. It's like, yes, this is a nice outcome, but like there's a cost that is sometimes less visible. So yeah, I'm curious to hear more about your thoughts on that, because I think it's this was actually like a section in my besides SF talk that I cut. It was in it, but then I was like, I don't have time.
Right.
But it was the title was going to be of this section was something like the private costs of public output.
Yeah.
Which I think people don't often think about. So anyway, this is like a long lead in, but I'm just
No,
curious about your thoughts on it.
That's great. I would have loved to have seen that section.
I'll show it to you.
Very poignant. Yeah. Yeah. So there is a cost to, like, everyone you see out there either making content or releasing research. There are hours and hours and hours that go into that, right? Parsing, white papers, theorizing, seeing if things work, testing, recording, editing. We're even here, recording and editing is going to be a part of this workflow. And there is some real cost and time to that. And in the beginning, I wasn't very good about it. I have 3 kids of varying ages, and they're wonderful and wonderful wife. But definitely there were some years where Julia, my wife, put in a lot of work to make sure that we could get to where we are as a unit. And then later on, I'm able to scale back a little bit more and structure my time. And so just now I try to stay a very rigid structure. It's like work, the 8 hours a day that I'm supposed to spend 2 hours for homework and dinner time and family dinner and stuff like that. Then me and my kids usually pick a show to watch, like something we can just chill on the couch and watch and do something. And then I'm back to spending time with my wife before she goes to bed. And then I am burning the candle a little bit, from like that 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. time to do a little bit more research, get ready for the next day of work. And that's my pretty much my schedule. And just having a schedule is good to keep me to, away from burnout. But yeah, it's an investment as well. Like, I mean, I wouldn't change anything, honestly. Like, even though it was hard in the beginning, it's like all that research for the bug hunters methodology. I gave that talk for 10 years, and every quarter I would update it with the newest techniques and tactics that modern bug hunters were using in both reconnaissance and web hacking. And it was a lot of time and energy, and but it paid off, right? Everybody knows that talk now. So
yeah, I think to your point, there can be, for some people, if they choose to, some value in really hustling and grinding at the beginning of their career so that they gain skills faster, make connections, give some talks that put them on the map a little bit. So there is like that interpersonal or perhaps personal cost. But if you're going to pay that, can be useful to pay it earlier versus when you have kids and family. And
you don't want to. I mean, I don't want to be paying it now. I'm a year away from my daughter going to college. This is very precious time right now. So I want to. I want to restructure right now for time invest with her. So
yeah, that makes sense. So going back to just more general career advice, and I think going into the leadership aspect, I think is interesting. So you're very technical, have been for a long time, but also in sort of technical security leader roles. But I'm curious, like, what's it like being a hacker as the CISO of Ubisoft?
Yeah, so I mean, my interview at Ubisoft was really interesting because, I'm a huge nerd. If I have downtime and I'm not doing research, I'm playing video games, and so that was kind of my tribe growing up. I had gamer friends and stuff, and I was playing at that time The Division, which was a Ubisoft title, and I loved it. I loved that game, and so I heard through a friend of a friend that Ubisoft was looking for like the highest ranking security role at that time. And I was like, okay, I'll go talk to him. So they had seen some of my talks, the bug hunters methodology and some of the other ones. And luckily the person who was in that interim role knew about me through my research. And so invited me to come out to the campus. And what they wanted me to do was present to them about how I would run their security program. But they didn't give me any information about Ubisoft. They're like, we just want you to come tell us what you would do, right? Even though they had a fully functioning program already. And so I ended up building a presentation. Again, storytelling and presentation skills come in very important in some parts of the industry. And I did a whole bunch of research around, how Ubisoft was structured as a business, how their IT infrastructure was laid out, their user base, their employee base, things like that. I did a whole reconnaissance.
Yeah, I was going to say all the OSINT and recon
Yep.
skills from your bug bounty.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what I used. I gave them a whole bug bounty kind of readout, but I mapped it more towards how I would structure the security program from that information. And they loved it. They were like, this is the most prepared anyone's come to an interview. So I got that job. And I am a firm believer that if you haven't worked deep in a technical discipline in security, it's really hard to devise a security program for an organization. So I hadn't worked there particularly, so I didn't know, all the skeletons in the closet for Ubisoft, but I definitely had worked as pen tester and at other places through BugCrowd, through the bug bounty platform I worked at. I had extensively been a part of a bunch of security groups, right? Like consulting them through AppSec stuff. And once you get that experience, you definitely get a very kind of technical minded, pointed view of security engineering, I think. And so that was what I wanted to do when I went in there, and I wanted to transform kind of an older program into a newer program. And so that's what I went in with the mind with. And I think because I had such technical reverence at that point, my research was around, it wasn't hard to get people on board. I was like, here's what I want to do. I think I told most of my staff there, I said, we're a restaurant and we're building this menu and this is what we're doing. And that required a lot of reframing of how we action security. And I was proud of the work I did there. We had some hiccups. We had some incidents and breaches, just like everybody does.
Yeah, everybody does.
Yeah, but it was a great experience. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I'm curious if you could share more about the interpersonal aspects in terms of like with that title. Obviously, you're communicating to your organization, but you're also working perhaps cross-functionally with engineering and other parts of the business, maybe talking to the C-suite, talking to the board. So yeah, I'm curious for maybe like a younger hacker who's like watching this, thinking about it. Because I think some people are like, oh, well, the natural progression of my career is to become a CISO because that's like the highest title for security. But
it's not for everybody.
But it's not for everyone. And so I'm curious if you could maybe describe more like what's the day-to-day like? Sure. What are some of the friction points, or like what are the worst parts of the job? And maybe some of the great parts too. But just so people can be like, oh, like, do I even want that?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I'll start off with kind of what you are as a CISO. And at some companies, they don't have the CISO title, right? It's like, you're basically, I'm describing the, top level security leader position at any company, right? And the idea is that, you have your security program, which is comprised of building security teams to execute security projects. And your, guiding and influence and strategy is part of the process, but it's not as much as you'd think it is. It's actually the people under you. So your primary job is to protect them from the business and make sure they can execute at their highest levels and mentor them. So that is one of your main jobs as a CISO. And so it's hard because they don't even know you're doing that sometimes for them. But the thing you're protecting them from is, other parts of the business trying to come in and steal parts of your budget or your mandate or whatever. You're protecting them against the board. You're briefing the board on everything that's happening in the program, what you're accomplishing, what that budget is going towards. It's a lot of budgeting, actually.
30% of the job.
Yeah, it's a lot of budgeting. And then also celebrating their wins when they do, protect us from something or a part of a program goes well, right? It's like, there is a function of security marketing that's internal to an organization, at least a big one, that is really important, because otherwise security is unseen pretty much all the time. And so, you have to be good about celebrating the wins. But a day to day is like meetings, basically meetings and Excel spreadsheets. So you wake up, you're in an executive meeting with all your other executives, and you do daily stand up kind of at the executive level. Then you're preparing for your quarterly board meeting, which is metrics and gathering stories to tell. Then you're meeting with your directors every few days to, just do a stand up with them. And then you have associated shaking hands and holding babies or whatever that metaphor is at the
Yeah.
rest of the company. So it is a lot of that, a lot of business minutia, and it's not for everybody. And then during like what we would call peacetime, right? And then wartime, it is stressful. It is, depending on if you're having an incident or a breach or whatever level, whatever, it is, up 18 hours a day, being kind of the head of the incident. Not necessarily the incident commander, but definitely the spokesperson for the security team while they can do their job of eradication or whatever they need to be doing. And so those are very stressful times as well. And the buck stops with you. Everything is on your table and on your plate. So I tell people when they're thinking about going into that job is like, first of all, a lot of people romanticize that role as, oh, I'm going to design the security program and the policy, and that's all I'm doing. It's not that at all. I mean, you do some of it, but actually your people under you end up doing most of that, right? And you just are the guiding kind of principles of an overall program. And then you got to be comfortable in meetings. You got to be comfortable playing politics. You got to be comfortable, budgeting and so those are things that people don't think about in that role. So
yeah, thanks for sharing. That's super cool. Yeah, it sounds you're talking about like the politicking, like little Game of Thrones-esque, depending on the company.
I mean, there's never been to a company I've heard of or been to that didn't have a little bit of it, but some are way better than others. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, do you have any, I think there's some advice that is good advice and is often shared, but I'm curious if you have any advice that you've personally found effective either for you or for mentees that's maybe a little unorthodox or like less common or maybe controversial or spicy.
I mean, I have
something that many people may not agree with or have thought of before.
Okay. Well, I have a strategy for when you move into your first leadership or executive or director role. I have one of those.
Nice.
And then I have kind of a piece of content that has just been stuck in my brain this last week and weeks before getting here, but it's been around for a little while. I don't know if it's spicy or not, but I feel like it a little bit. So I'll go with a piece of content first. So,
okay. Yeah.
Quite a while ago, I think it was right after he got out of office, Obama did this interview, and I can't remember who it was, but it came up on my social feed like 2 or 3 months ago. And it was him talking about going through his life as kind of an underdog politically and at his university and everything like this. And every level he reached, he expected the people who went to Harvard or people who were in the cabinet or the people who were world leaders of other countries to be these amazing, like brilliant people. And Obama's response in this piece of content was all saying all that. I mean, there's some that are great. There are some that are infinitely, well read and smart. But a lot of people, end up in positions that, they're no better than you, and you could do just as good of a job if you put in the hard work. And that was kind of his message. And so, being here at RSA this week, you'd be in a room with a lot of people who have crazy titles and who work at companies that you hold in high regard. And it's been very much like that. It's been like, hey, these are just people, and we're all working on the same problems, and no one's inherently like better or worse than anybody. And since I have like crushing imposter syndrome on the inside, I don't show it outside, but on the inside I do. It is nice to remember that, like that little piece of content, and it's be like, you can belong here. It's fine, So that's one.
Oh, just I love that. Yeah. Quickly about that. I think one thing that was actually helpful for me is meeting you and other people that I looked up to for many years,
and
I was no. I was like, wow, there's all these people who have done amazing things, are super technical that I respect highly, and then just grabbing drinks or hanging out at a conference and hearing you or Dan or others being like, at least in this one way, I do have some imposter syndrome. Actually made me feel better because I was like, having imposter syndrome and not feeling as maybe technical as I want to be, I'm like, well, if there's these people who I feel like are further along than me or are people I look up to, if they also feel that way, then I guess it's okay that I feel that way. So I don't know. Yeah. It was helpful to me hearing people I looked up to also felt that way because I'm like, I guess we all feel that way to some extent.
Yeah.
So
I went to a thing yesterday. It was at the Airbnb offices. It was a AI summit thing offsite of RSA. And I went to it, and one of the Google representatives was there who worked on Gemini.
Nice.
It's like one of the head managers there. I can't remember his name for the life of me. That sucks. But
was it CISO? Was it VJ?
Wasn't VJ. No.
Okay.
Wasn't VJ. But he was talking about being wrong. And he's like, we're Google. We're the birthplace of, this is AI Summit, right? Birthplace of the transformer, right? And he was talking about some view he had about context and golden data, and a colleague telling him, this is the way we should think about this architecture, is build this golden data set and then, find use cases for LLMs to action it and give us, not the other way around, like think first about the LLM problem and try to solve it without the data that we need. And he was talking about this, and then at the end of his, kind of story, he was saying, I was wrong. I was completely wrong. My colleague was right. And it was kind of refreshing to hear, like, oh yeah, this guy's like big brain at Google. And, yeah, it was really nice to hear someone say, yeah, I got it wrong. And now we do it right. And I think that's a cool, vulnerable place, and made me feel okay about also being at the front of, like a thing we don't know about yet, like not totally. So yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying imposter syndrome, and then other.
Oh yeah, the other thing that was really valuable to me, and it could be invaluable to listeners who are moving from, that kind of IC role to maybe a manager role or a director role or a CISO role, right? Is one of the first things that my mentor at Ubisoft sat me down and had me do was to actually get out a piece of paper. And we mapped all of the influencers at Ubisoft. So all of the directors, all of the VPs, kind of like what they were in charge of. Like, you really need to understand the business. And when it's a big business, it's not easy, right? There's a lot of executives. And there's also a lot of people who are influencers without having a title, right? It's like the most technical person in this production. They're actually the ones that make the decision silently for, design and architecture. And so we sat down with a paper and a pen and just wrote down names, started circling people. These are the people we need to influence, and not maliciously, but like we just need to make sure that we build relationships with these people.
Yeah, to get security controls into this part of the org, we need buy-in from.
Yeah, we need buy-in from this person, right? And that meant that you had to strike deals, or you had to, take them out to lunch every once in a while. You just can't forget about them, right? It's like a lot of it is politicking in the way of building relationships and networking, even inside your own business. So that was a killer exercise for when I first got there, because if I hadn't have done that, there would have been so much bumping and tripping around trying to build those relationships without his help and without me even really knowing how the business worked. And so definitely try to do that when you land in a new place. Learn about the people you work with. It's really important.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's definitely something I've seen as well. The importance of relationships and rapport in terms of like getting things done versus just organizationally, because of my title and role, you should be like doing what I'm telling you to do. Like, that's kind of works sometimes, but like often not. Often versus if they like you and they're like I got you.
Yeah, exactly. It's 100%. Yeah, I mean, even though you may have the mandate that supersedes, like that says that you can say what goes because you're security, which is changing nowadays too. There's not a lot of security programs that are still trying to do that because it makes everybody hate you. But even if you do have that, like in the financial world, a lot of security programs work like that. It doesn't mean they'll listen to you, even if you have the authority to tell them what to do. You have to build relationships, and you have to compromise sometimes. And yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. So
yeah, for sure. Well, Jason, thanks so much for chatting today. It's been a pleasure. Do you have any final words of wisdom, or where should people keep up with you, and what should they be aware of that's awesome and going on in your life?
Yeah, so started this company Arcanum about a year and a half ago now, and so we do training, cutting edge training on attacking AI systems and using AI to scale your current security team, and then also how to do modern bug hunting and pen testing. So you can find us at arcanum-sec.com. You can find me on @jhaddix on Twitter. That's mostly where I have conversations, or X now, I guess, right? And I think I'm going to close with something a really good friend of mine talked about earlier this week. He gave this keynote at this really awesome conference called B-Sides, San Francisco. His name is Clint. I don't know if you know him, but
no, I haven't met him.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And he had one slide that just basically said that you belong, right? Like, and you as a person, you at your organization, you even within yourself, right? Like you belong here. You can do this, and just come along with this journey with us, because it's pretty fun. So
yeah. You said some very kind words after it, and made my heart grow 10 sizes.
Nice, very good.
Well, cool. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Clint.
See you soon.